The rise of nationalism in India. In this chapter, we are going to study how feeling of nationalism grew in India, what efforts were taken to unite different people, how Indian national movement became a mass movement. Let us discuss about what causes resentment against the government. Resentment means anger. Why do people get angry against the government? Number one, war expenditure and forced recruitment. During wartime, government has to spend money on war. War expenditure increases and government does the forced recruitment of soldiers. This makes the people angry. In full in order to fulfill war expenditure, government has to increase the taxes. Government introduces new taxes. Sometimes the government fails to control epidemic or diseases. It fails to control rising prices. There are famines, and due to famines there are crop failures. Shortage of food. These are some of the factors which cause anger against the government. New situations after the First World War. The First World War was fought between 1914 and 1918. There was a huge increase in defense expenditure. War loans were taken by the British government and taxes were increased. Custom duties were raised and income tax was introduced in India for the first time. Rise in prices. Prices in India doubled during this time, which led to the hardships of the common people. Forced recruitment of soldiers in rural areas caused widespread anger. Crop failure resulted in acute shortage of food. Influenza epidemic. According to the census of 1921, 12 to 30 million people perished as a result of famines and the epidemic. Even after the war, people continued to suffer. These are the factors which make the Indians angry against the government. And in this situation, Gandhiji returns from South Africa. He returns from South Africa in the year 1915. He fought against racism in South Africa with a novel method of mass agitation which he called Satyagraha. What is Satyagraha? Fight against injustice through non-violent ways. Physical force is not necessary when the cause is true and if the struggle is against injustice. Satyagrahi can win the battle without violence, without revenge, and without being aggressive. Satyagrahi has to appeal to the conscience of the oppressor. He has to persuade the oppressor to see the truth. The oppressor should not be forced to accept the truth through the use of violence. In this process, truth ultimately wins. Let us see Gandhiji's early satyagrahas in India. In the year 1916, he did satyagraha in Champaran in Bihar for the indigo farmers against the British landlords. Number two is Kheda, Gujarat in 1917. When the crops had failed, peasants were unable to pay the taxes. They demanded relaxation in the taxes, but the government refused. That time Gandhiji went and led the struggle of the peasants there. Number three is Ahmedabad, Gujarat mill workers fight. He went there and supported cotton mill workers against industrialists to increase their wages, and finally he succeeded. What was the Rowlett Act? Rowlett Act was passed in the year 1919. It gave the power to the government to repress political activities. It allowed detention of political prisoners without trial for 2 years. Gandhiji and the Rowlett Act. He launched a nationwide satyagraha against the Rowlett Act. It started on 6th April with Hartal. Jallianwala Bagh massacre. It took place on 13 April 1919. Crowd gathered to protest against the government in Punjab at Jallianwala Bagh massacre, Amritsar. Some came to attend annual fair of Baisakhi. People came from outside city, hence they were unaware of martial law. Martial law means military law. Dyer blocked the exit, opened fire on the crowd, killing hundreds. Seeking the Muslim support to Indian nationalism, Gandhiji felt that he should launch a more broad based movement in India, and he was certain that no such movement could be organized without bringing the Hindus and Muslims together. One way of doing this was to take up the Khilafat issue. What is Khilafat movement? In the First World War, Ottoman Turkey was defeated by the British. They were going to impose an insulting treaty on the emperor of Ottoman power. He was regarded as a spiritual leader of the Muslims all over the world. He was known as the Caliph. The Sultan of Turkey was regarded as the successor of Prophet Muhammad. To defend Caliph, young Indian Muslims started a movement against the British that is called as Khilafat Movement. Leaders like Muhammad Ali and his brother Shaukat Ali were active and were in touch with Gandhiji. Gandhiji saw this as an opportunity to bring Muslims under the umbrella of a unified national movement. At Kolkata session in September 1920, he convinced the other Congress leaders to start non-cooperation movement in support of Khilafat. Watch me on YouTube for the second part of Nationalism in India.